Of course, I go live the second I take the sip of my beverage. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, good night, good everything to all the wonderful listeners out there. As you know, I am Jason Weiss. I am the host of the Ask Jason Weiss show. For those of you that have listened in the past, you know this. I will go ahead and I will give the disclaimer, especially because today we have two lawyers on the line. So anything we say is not legal advice. Should you seek legal or financial advice, consult an attorney directly. What we talk about today is hypothetical. You have not retained either one of us today to be your lawyer. We are here discussing the law. There is no attorney-client privilege, and don't rely upon anything that, especially I say, but don't rely upon anything that we say. So as you all know, I'm Jason Weiss. I'm the host, and today I am very excited to have Kenya on the show with me. Kenya is a podcaster like myself. She is also an environmental attorney. And we will talk about what an environmental attorney is in a second. But when you have two hosts of podcasts on one podcast, there's going to be a lot of talking over each other, a lot of talking, a lot of laughing, and a lot of fun. And I will tell you, I was honored to be on her show about a month ago, and it was so much fun. She does such an amazing job. So make sure to check out her podcast, which is called Thank You for Saying No. Awesome. And what I hope to accomplish today is let people hear about her show, which is on YouTube, and let other people also hear about her journey, how she got to where she is, and what's going on. So, Kenya, you are joining us from where in the world today?
I am in Los Angeles, California.
And you went to law school where?
I went to the University of Miami.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a simple question. You went to school in Miami, you moved to LA. Explain the reasoning, and also explain for the viewers that are either in law school or haven't gotten there yet, or no intention, like what kind of hurdles you have from going to law school in one jurisdiction and getting barred in another. So let's start with, just tell us a little bit about, your journey to UM, then to California, and any obstacles or hurdles because of the geographic and location.
No, it was pretty easy. No, I'm just kidding. No. Yeah, so I really wanted to go to law school on the East Coast. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and I lived in Berkeley for about 4 years. I went to school out there, and then I worked in San Francisco at an immigration law firm. So I really felt like I wanted to get away for law school and live somewhere new. And so the East Coast was calling me. I was deciding between, DC, New York, or Miami. I think it was Cardozo, American, and the University of Miami. And when I applied to law school, whenever I got an acceptance letter, it was either like a full ride to maybe a lower ranked school, or I could go to a higher ranked school, but I had to pay the full thing. So finance was a big factor in where I decided to go. And I visited all three of, American, Cardozo, and the University of Miami. And of course, when I went to Miami, I fell in love with the city. As a California girl, the warm weather definitely was a big factor. But I will say the University of Miami was one of the only schools that had an environmental program, which is what I was really interested. Like, I went to law school with the intention of being an environmental attorney. That's what I went to school. So I knew what I wanted to do when I was done. And the fact that they had that environmental program is what made me decide to go there. Funny enough is I didn't participate in that environmental program because I didn't get in. It was a clinic. And so, but, I'm still glad I made the decision to go, and I got really great opportunities anyways.
So we hear about it now, that's me. Okay, there we go. Now that we're in the election stage, and we don't talk about politics at all, so we're not going to talk about that. but you hear the candidates talking about things such as the EPA, the environment, global warming, and the word that has been coming out a lot now is fracking. So dovetailing into you being an environmental lawyer, first tell us what that means, and then we'll catch each of those things. Like if you know what fracking is, because not everybody does. Awesome. If you want to punt that question, go right ahead. But I'd like to talk about like environmental law, what it is, and how it's relating to the election, not politics. Not if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Kennedy support. What I don't care. In general, and I had to put that out there because we don't talk politics.
Okay. Environmental law can be many different facets. So I practice environmental protection, which entails, stopping pollution in the air. So industrial facilities or even farming. Most of my air cases are farming. So the diesel engines for the tractors. Farming is a really big business. It's not just like, small farmers, like we're talking big, big things happening. And so all of those diesel engines, tractors, like even chipping, all of those are regulated and they create pollutants in the environment. So a big part of my practice is regulating those. And I also do a lot of water protection work. So industrial facilities that discharge from their facility when it's raining, all of that just goes directly into the ocean, and it can touch sometimes drinking water and all that sort of stuff. So that's my practice, is environmental protection work. So when people ask me about like, well, what do you think of the straws? I'm like, man, that sucks. That's not what I do. Like, I don't want anyone to die. I don't want turtles to die, but that is not what I do.
Paper straws are terrible. Boo. Yeah. Give me the ones that are made out of plant. I'm okay because they feel like plastic, but paper ones, keep the straw, drink out of a cup,
Right.
So you're like the attorney in Erin Brockovich. I know Erin Brockovich she was not the attorney, but she worked with attorneys. So if anybody's seen that movie, it was the older gentleman. So picture it as a young woman, and there you have Kenya.
Yeah.
She works with that. I mentioned the word fracking. I know a little bit about it. It's basically that you're forcing like gas and oil and stuff out of rocks, and it seems that if one side of the electoral candidates gets nominated, fracking is something that will be explored. Is that something that you could talk about a little bit, fracking in general, and what it is and what the concerns are?
Maybe a little bit. So there's two sort of paths we can move forward with, just in terms of energy. There's things that are maybe dirtier and cheaper, and things that are cleaner and better for the environment, but perhaps maybe more expensive up front. But in the long run, it's like, how are you measuring cost? Is it only financial? Is it environmental? Is it safety? Is it, there's lots of factors that go into considering one or the other. And I personally am an advocate for clean energy and things that are better for the environment, obviously. But yeah, it definitely, it's all about how you frame it. I think a lot of the energies are focused around, well, they can have jobs, like, especially with fracking. It's like, well, we could have more jobs with fracking. I'm like, that's not exactly true. You can still have jobs with clean energy. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's all about how it's framed and what's being considered. And as like a voter and a person thinking critically about these things, we have to ask all the questions,
Right. I mean, I know I know your goal is to protect the environment. That's what you do for a living. That's your day job. That's what it is. And there are certain ways to do it. And we all need to look. I was kidding, but I wasn't. I don't like paper straws. So if you're gonna tell me, I need to use a metal reusable washable one, I'm okay with that. If you're going to tell me that I got to use one of the plant-based ones, I'm okay with that. But give me the option. Hey, we only have paper straws. No, thank you. That type of thing.
That honestly, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but that always boggles me when the paper straws are created, because that just means more trees are cut down. Like, I just don't think that's a good solution. I just don't think it is. But I don't know. Straws are not my area of expertise, I have to say, but I never understood that.
They're not mine either, but I like drinking water out of a cup with a plastic or a metal straw. So
yeah,
it is what it is. So what is, like, where do you find your clients or your clientele or things of interest? I'm sure you're not Aaron Brockovich going out there yourself, and you might have an Aaron Brockovich type that you work with, or is your firm well known and established that it's, hey, we have an EPA issue, we're coming directly to you? Like, how does that work? What are your typical clients look like?
Yeah, and I love that you're calling it an EPA issue, which is, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I don't know if it's technically correct, because EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency, and we just do environmental law. But so technically also the EPA doesn't do any litigation. If they ever have to go to court, they give it to the DOJ, the Department of Justice. So, gotcha. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, but just to make that distinction.
No, please. I got to learn. I deal with EPA issues with a client. I'm on the other side, and we try to comply with EPA. So we don't get a letter from someone who does environmental law like yourself.
Exactly.
So I got it. So in the environmental, so if someone's listening today and they're like, oh, I need a lawyer for, what is it that you are able to do for companies, individuals, whatever? Like, what's your client base look like?
Mostly nonprofits. So we do a lot of work for nonprofits. In California, the firm that I'm at is pretty well known. I think there's only maybe one or two other environmental law firms that do the type of work we do. So we are very well known in California. And so we represent a lot of nonprofits, mostly for like our water protection cases. And we also serve as enforcement counsel for government entities. So let's say, an air district is trying to get a farmer to comply, and they've done all of their procedures and the farmer is still not complying, then we'll come in and we'll sue, and then we'll try and get into compliance. And it's not always a farmer. Sometimes it's, like an industrial, whatever they're doing, but it's not always a farmer. I just want to keep that clear. But yeah, so we'll come in and we'll sue them, and we'll say, these are all your violations. And then the goal is to get them into compliance. That's always the goal.
And then how would you get paid? You would get paid by the nonprofit, or do you get paid by the company that you sue? Does the government pay you? Who pays your firm, or who pays you?
Yeah, it varies. So we do contingency, which means we get paid later. Some we do like a certain amount up front, and then the rest is contingency. Some is hourly. I think it really depends on the case. So and some of that is above my pay grade, I will say, but I do know those are the three ways. It's either hourly, some upfront, some contingency, or all contingency. I do have to bill hours though. So.
Gotcha. So I know, like, sometimes when you have a private right of action for like a TCPA, ADA, other things, that the prevailing party is entitled to fees from the party that needs to get into compliance. So I wasn't sure, for example, when you were talking about farmers, even though we're not focusing on farmers, if part of the settlement is we'll comply and the farmers have to pay X amount of dollars towards attorney's fees. I wasn't sure if it was like what we call the fee shifting.
Sometimes I don't know if it's necessarily for the farmer cases, because those are our government cases, mostly like our enforcement cases.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm scared to misspeak. I don't know.
That's fine. Hey, look, one of the things that's so important, and you just hit the nail on the head, and this wasn't scripted by any means. So look, one of the things I talk about in my book called Shit They Never Taught You in Law School. All right, there's my self plug. But no, one of the things, and this is what I want to get into, is that attorneys can't be afraid to say, I don't know, or let me figure that out, or a nice way of doing it. You know what? That was a great question. Give me an hour, give me a day, give me a week. Let me get back to you. And I couldn't have scripted this any better, even if I tried scripting it. That's the best answer that she could have given. Look, I'm not 100% sure. So I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth, and I'm going to say, let me look into it. Or in Kenya's situation, hey, if you think you have an environmental issue or a problem, and you need an attorney and you're in California or California related, hire Kenya, right? There's my plug, because she's going to tell you what she knows. And if she doesn't know it, she's going to get you the answer. And that is something that we as attorneys and the outside world looking at us as attorneys needs to know. Like, we don't know everything. And I got this from a client the other day. They're like, oh, I'm getting sued for this, this, and this, and this with, my ex-wife. What do I do? I'm like, hire a family law attorney? I don't know. Look, you're a lawyer, don't you know? And I said to my guy, I'm like, you're a mechanic, right? Yeah. So if I have a problem with my car, I should bring it to you. Yeah. But if I owned a jet ski, which I don't, do you think you could fix that? No. Well, you're asking me to fix your jet ski.
Right.
Oh, and people don't get that. So
they don't. And I will say that, especially in my first few years of being an attorney, I wasn't comfortable saying, I don't know. And I think that can be, for me, it really fucked me up mentally, because you come out of law school, you're like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. Like, I just studied for the bar. I just did 3 years of law school. Like, I can fucking do it. And then you get into your first day, your first month, your first year of practicing law, and all you know is nothing. You literally don't know anything. And so anytime anyone asks you something, you're like, oh, fuck, I don't know again. Sorry. Am I allowed to cuss here?
I don't know. So we'll try not to, but it's no harm, no foul. I don't know. See, I'm allowed to say that. I'm sure the FCC and all the others are going to say no cursing, or only use the title of your book shit. So we're good. But again, we are here to assist and help provide options and answers. We are not here as lawyers, coaches, consultants, podcast hosts, podcast guests, anything to tell you what to do. And anybody that does, they need to put themselves in check. Now, yes, I think I have the right to tell my 17-year-old son he can't stay out past curfew, right? I have that right. Will he listen? I don't know. But at the same time, as lawyers, as professionals, we're here to help you make an informed decision. That is our role. Hey, look, you don't want to get sued? You might want to do these 3 things. You're okay with being sued? Then do it your way. But I'm going to send you an email afterwards saying, although I advised you not to, you decided to, and then I'm off the hook. And we call those CYA emails, cover your arsh. So that's what we call it. Because again, I don't know what kind of language we're allowed to use on the show.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we talked about the environment a little bit. We skated around politics because we're not talking politics. We're going to take a real quick commercial break. And when we come back, I want to focus on the word no. Specifically, thank you for saying no, and where that got you and where that brought you to where you are today, because your story is incredible. And I've had a chance to hear about it and watch some of your podcasts, and it's awesome. So we're going to run a quick commercial break. We'll come back. I'll do my disclaimer, and then we're going to talk about thank you for saying no. So go for a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back in 30 seconds to a minute. I love the music from the commercial. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for saying no. Real quick, we are both lawyers on this show, but neither one of us today is your lawyer. We could be if you call us and connect with us, and we'll be okay. That's not the purpose here. So if we give something that you think is legal advice, it's not. There's no attorney-client privilege, and go at your own pace is basically. But what I want to talk about here, and this is the fun part for me, is the word no. And Kenya says it very nicely. She says, "Thank you for saying no." And I think she's started a movement. And I'm watching her on Instagram, or you can follow her. And I've seen her podcast, and I've seen it on YouTube. But I want her to tell you a little bit about thanks for saying no. So I'm going to shut up, and I am going to allow her to speak. No, Jason. No, I'm kidding. Go. Yeah. So thank you for saying no. Tell us a little bit about it and how it came to be. I love this story. So I'm just going to sit and listen.
The podcast came to me as an idea before it was a podcast. So thank you for saying no as a sort of mantra that I would tell myself when I was in law school applying for jobs, because I really, really wanted to work in Washington, D.C. That was my dream. I wanted to work either for the government or somewhere in politics, like doing environmental law. And that's where I wanted to be. And so I applied to probably hundreds, like at least 200. It has to have been more. 200 places, and I got no offers. And I was lucky if I got a rejection. I mostly just didn't hear back from anybody, which I took as a no. And I remember telling myself, like, after every rejection or after every time I didn't hear back, that one day I'll be glad this isn't working out. One day I'll be saying, thank you for saying no. So when I ended up moving back home to California, which is where I'm from, I found an environmental job. And I decided to start the podcast. And I was like, you know what? I think a lot of people could benefit from this mantra, from this perspective that rejection doesn't have to be a bad thing, that it can actually be a blessing in disguise. And so that's how the podcast idea came to me. It also was a way for me to look for my own inspiration, because it took me probably like a full year to fully unpack once I moved back to California, because I wasn't ready to accept that I had not made it to Washington, D.C. So I was really looking for inspiration through the podcast of other people getting no's and getting rejections, but it working out for them anyways, and them finding a way to be grateful for it because of what happened next. So it's been a really, really fun, really inspiring process for me. And then what I didn't expect from the podcast, I do have to say, is connecting with the listeners, because now we have a format for listeners to write in to the show, and they'll write their own thank you for saying no story, and then I read it on the show and I react to it. But the stories that we've gotten submitted are just insane to me. Like, people really connect and really share personal experiences about what they went through. So the inspiration I get from the listeners is something I wasn't expecting, but that I love.
And look, the listeners, and you know this well. I'm a dad of a son who's going to play college lacrosse, and he has gotten no's from coaches. He's also gotten yeses, and he also had to learn how to say no. So for a 17-year-old, hey, my dream school is ABC, and ABC doesn't have a spot for me. But I also need to tell school 1, 2, 3 that I'm not interested. That's a huge learning thing, and it's awesome. And he actually sat in the studio during our podcast, and he listened, and he said some of it really resonated with him because that's what he was going through at the time. But the point behind my babbling is that it's not just for lawyers, for everybody that's listening. The no, it's kind of cheesy and cliche, but every time one door closes, another one opens. Like, I don't know if I believe that, but I do believe that, every time you get knocked down, it's not important, that you got knocked down. What the important thing is, and what matters, is that you get back up and get back up with a smile, not get back up with anger and go attack. Like, all right, I got knocked down. I'm back up. Let's do this again. I'm going to try it differently. So instead of faxing my resume, I'm going to email my resume, or I'm going to send it FedEx, or I'm going to do whatever. Or, there's times that I wanted a job so badly. And then I found out that the person they hired, got fired and moved across the country and did all this. And can you imagine if I picked up my whole family and moved back to New York? Like, oh my God, So the thank you for saying no is a great optimistic view of the world.
Yeah.
And I like it, but it's also a forum to let you know, like, you're not alone, right? We're all in this together. You might not be a lawyer, you might not be, whatever, but, thanks for saying no.
You playing some music?
I know my phone was ringing, and I guess it's hooked up to my Bluetooth speaker, which I wasn't expecting. So, hey, look, I just said no to the phone call. Hey, I'll call you back. Whoever's calling me right now, I need another 20 minutes and I'll call you back. So, but that's the other thing, right? As practicing attorneys, we also need to learn how to say no. So how do you take what you learned on the thank you for saying no to, let's just say, and this is a softball, you got a rejection letter from, the firm in Washington, D.C. that you want, what did you learn from that?
Well, I learned a lot of things. One, I learned how to come back better. So, and this is what I mean by that. If I applied to a job using a certain cover letter or using a certain resume, if I got a rejection based off that, I would go back and fine tune my cover letter, fine tune my resume, and try it again. And so by the time I came out of all of the rejections, my resume was stellar. My cover letter was stellar. So I made sure to use what I thought, because I am not the kind of person that was like, well, why didn't you hire me? Like, I don't want to know. I probably know. It's because of my grades. It's because I didn't do moot court. It's because I didn't do law review. Like, I already know why you didn't. If someone's going to hire me, it's going to be because of my personality. I already know. I already know. And you know what?
Sometimes it's just getting your foot in the door, right?
Right.
Look, I may present as, hypothetically, as a B-level student on paper, but meet me, right? I have a book of business that's X amount of dollars, and I'm out there, and I can command the room, and when I get in, I can give a presentation. Well, that's more important than the B you got in con law. Like, who cares at this point in your life? But that's just me on my soapbox, because I think law school needs to do a complete and total revamp, and I think it should be either 2.5 years in the classroom and half a year of a practical, or keep it 3 years in the classroom, but you need real life training.
100%. And that's definitely what frustrates me about just the legal profession in general. And like I said, I came to law school to be an environmental attorney. So I was ready to go the second I started. I didn't want to do things that didn't make a difference from the get-go, which is why I intentionally didn't do moot court. I intentionally didn't do law review. I was only willing to work on things where I was actually making a difference right away. And I knew those things would bite me in the arse, because everyone told me that you have to do all of these things to even get your foot in the door. And so I knew what I was doing. I knew it would be harder down the road, and it was, but I don't regret it, because I had to stay true to what felt right to me during that process. And for me, I had to be working. I had to be working on real cases that made a difference. I tried to circumvent it by writing papers that got published. I still got 2 law papers that got published in law journals. So, I'm still out there, but definitely. And I personally think the creative thinking is what helps you in practice. And just because, listen, I always joke that I was the top of the bottom of my class. I was still at the top.
Hey, C equals JD. That's all I gotta say. And look, a lot of it is, look, when my son, he's applied to colleges and he's been reading about the colleges. Some of the colleges are really cool, where it's look, we don't require you to take calculus and physics if you're going to go into business. Like, who needs that? Yes, you need statistics because it's important, but you don't need calculus, you don't need physics, you don't need biology. The flip side is, what if, and you're a different story, but the flip side is, what would happen if you took an environmental protection or an environmental law class and you went, oh man, what I've been wanting to do for my entire life ain't for me? Then you could have been like stuck on that path. So I think it's important that we have to learn some of that, but I do think they should allow more electives right off the bat. Like, I went to law school, I wanted to be a sports agent. Didn't happen, right? I worked with athletes, I worked with entertainers, never became an agent. And then I was going to do criminal law. And when I started interning a little bit at the public defender's office, I'm like, it ain't for me. So there are so many things that we could learn in law school. And look, let's get practical. Let's get out there. Let's volunteer. Let's do more. And let's grow from the nose. And I like that. You know, it hit me the first time we spoke. It was, you know, one door closes, another one opens. Thanks for telling me I shouldn't go down that path. And that's important. When you're in the thick of it, I know it sucks. So how do you get through when you're in the thick of it and you're like, I'm pumped. I can't wait. I can't wait. No, thank you. Like, what do you do? What are your coping mechanisms that you can share with listeners and maybe put a smile on someone's face?
So one of the biggest no's, well, there's obviously so many, but one in particular that's standing out to me is when I applied for a job at a government agency. I won't call them out, but it was an environmental one. And I made it through, I think, 2 or 3 rounds of interviews. Each interview, I swear, was the best interview I ever had. I remember calling my dad after, being like, Dad, I got the job. Like, I know I got it. I couldn't have done better. Like, it was so good. I know it was. And then I've been waiting to hear back. Then I got the email, like, you know, we didn't pick you, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, wow. Like, what?
Right. And it's mind-boggling. And look, I'll see something online, you know, every once in a while on LinkedIn, and I'll just apply for the heck of it, you know, and see what's going on. And every email starts the same. Unfortunately, we will not be moving forward with your resume because we found somebody more aligned. Why is that unfortunate? Yes, it's unfortunate for me, but it's fortunate for you, right? You guys are good. So don't start with, I'm sorry, or unfortunately. Don't. Just thank you very much for applying. You know, we have decided to go with another candidate at this point in time. We'll keep you in mind for the future. And
yeah,
when I was applying for jobs before I started my own firm, I promised that when I did start hiring and did start growing and did start bringing in, that I wouldn't just ghost people. And I kept true to my word. Sometimes it sucks. I mean, it's difficult to say to somebody, hey, I really like you as a person. You're a great person, but just not for me, not for my firm. And I've done that.
And I had to remember when I got that rejection that there's a bigger picture at play that I don't even know. And I couldn't even possibly think of I couldn't possibly fill in all of the blanks because I just don't know. Maybe they had someone that they wanted from the get-go and they were just dotting their I's and crossing their T's for whatever purpose. And I was just part of the dot and part of the cross, you know?
Yeah. I'll tell you a real quick story. It's a group that my friend applied for the job. My friend was like basically walked in and was told, you need to hire this guy. Oh my God, we love him, blah, 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 blah. They brought him in for 5 interviews and they're like, we'll schedule the 6th and final interview so you can come in and we can talk numbers and do all that. And he's like, all right, sounds great. Nothing. About 60 days later, he gets an email saying, you know, dear so-and-so, it's unfortunate, but we hired somebody else. And the guy that they hired was the guy that left the job previously and decided to come back.
Oh, wow.
So they ran him through this whole hoopla. And look, I mean, would you have wanted to hear, hey, look, we're trying to bring back the person that was in the role. And if we can't get him, then we want you. So you're our second choice. I don't know if you'd want to hear that, but at least, you know, honesty. I do know that There was a college coach out there that my son was interested, and the college coach said, look, you are we put an offer out to somebody else who we have slightly ranked higher than you. If that individual takes it, we're done. If that individual doesn't take it, we'll come back to you. Not the news he wanted to hear, but at least they were honest.
And sometimes it's about looking at how far you've come. So just the fact that I had to just appreciate the fact that I was even interviewing and I had gotten this far, that I even made it, because that to me was just a sign that I was on the right path. Even if I didn't get the job, it's like I still got to be there and experience this, and being great, finding the things that you can be grateful for. And then again, using that to sharpen your tools and get back out there. And I will say in the legal field in particular, most people get their first job through someone they know. There's a very small portion of people who get a job by just applying. Maybe the top 10% of the class, which is only like maybe 20 people of however many people you actually go to school with. Everyone else gets a job through a connection, through networking. And so if I could give advice to people in law school now listening to this, it's network. Network your tiny off, and because those are the people who are going to give you your job. And if it's not your first one, it'll for sure as heck be your second or your third or your fourth. And so I got my job now in California because I knew the partner. I had worked with him when I graduated undergrad, and I was deciding between immigration and this environmental law firm. And so I worked with them part-time while I was working at the immigration law firm. And so when I graduated law school, I reached back out and they're like, yeah, you come work as a law clerk while you wait for your bar results. And then when you pass the bar, we'll sort of like, once I passed the bar, then they offered me the job. But I got it because I knew them. So networking is like the most important thing you can do.
And also, look, if you didn't do a good job when you were interning, your boss now wouldn't have said, come on after you do it. So that's another thing, right? There's a book and an author that I like to talk about a lot. His name is Steve Noodleberg. He's a friend of mine. And he says you need to treat every day and every client like it's day one on the job. What does that mean? That means when you start your job, you're like, yeah, today's my first day at work. I'm so pumped. When you're like me, you're 24 years into it. It's like, yeah, I've been practicing law for 24 years. So if somebody were to come to me and like, Jason, I kind of want you to help me out on a file and do all this. And I'll be like, all right, sure. They're going to be like, he doesn't care. But if it's like, yeah, let's go. How can I help you? Like, if you show them excitement and you show them you're caring about it, they're going to see that. So look, you were just, you were only interning. You didn't know that it was going to, and it turned out that you went that route. And if you would have half butted it, and instead of, going 110% like you do, you probably wouldn't have gotten that offer. So yeah. Think that's real important. And I can't stress that enough. And we don't see that. We see people are just mailing it in, and you can't, because if you mail it in, trust me, 3 other people aren't, and they're given 100%, and you're going to get overlooked for that position.
Yeah.
And it's important. It's important. So you get the no. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, what could I have done different? Sometimes you want to ask the question. Most of the time as humans, we don't want to. And you dust yourself off, you get back up and you do it again. And the important thing is that you learn from it. You said it. You tweaked your resume dozens of times. You got your cover letter so that it's right. So now that you've got it, not to, if her employer is listening, not because she's looking for a job, but you have that knowledge, you have that experience. And I think that's what we need to just remember. It's all about the experiences.
Right. And we don't know what's behind the next door. And it can literally be the greatest thing of our life. And it probably is, actually. When I moved back to California, I was like not sure what was behind the next door. I really didn't know. But now, like 3 years later, 2.5 years later, looking back, I'm so glad I moved to California. I'm so glad that I did. I love the firm that I'm at. I love the work that I do. The experience I get at this firm, I probably wouldn't have gotten at a bigger law firm or a different place. I've appeared in court. I did my first trial. I do like everything. You know what I mean? I get so much experience and I love it. I didn't expect to be a trial attorney. I thought I would be doing compliance. I thought I would never see a day in court. Like, that's what I wanted. And now I'm in court. I'm just like, oh my God, this is so stressful, but I'm having a blast. Like, I love it so much. And so I'm so grateful for how things worked out. And of course, my podcast is my little baby. I love it with all my heart. And it's just so much fun to do.
So and you couldn't, maybe you did see yourself, but I saw it. And when you were talking about like all of this, the passion, the excitement, it all came out. And that means that you're doing the right thing. And we need to look in the mirror sometimes, or on a screen or whatever it is, and be like, hey, I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing for 24 years. Okay. There's no emotion. There's no excitement, whatever. Hey, I'm the dad of a dancer or a young lady who is trying out for the cheerleading, team. Like, to me, that's cool. Like, that's the kind of stuff. So tell us about this No Baby.
My podcast baby?
Yeah.
Oh.
No Baby. Tell us a little bit about the podcast, because I really want listeners. I think it's huge to listen to.
Yeah. So the podcast is actually on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever it's there. But you can watch it on YouTube because there's a video component to it. But it's really fun. We have guests from really all different walks of life. We've had R&B singers. We've had some pretty big producers. The producer for Malik Yousef. We've had Isla, who's a singer. We've actually had an attorney turned comedian, Drew Morgan, and actors, actresses, other podcasters, the whole shebang. It's really fun. And everyone,
authors, colleagues from law school, you've had those as well, which is how we met. So, and again, it's all about connections, right? Kenya and I would not be sitting here today talking for our second podcast together if it weren't for Steph. So thank you, Steph. Thank you for saying yes as opposed to no when we both said we wanted to meet. So it's great. We are running out of time, which sucks. Piece of advice to anybody who's getting ready to go to law school, other than the obvious, which is network.
Don't do it. Oh no, sorry.
No, I'm in. Don't do it. So, are you currently reading anything or watching something on Netflix that you think, is like, oh my God, this is like a must, this is a life changer type thing?
No.
Okay.
I am not.
But you should follow her on Instagram, because you can see she's doing a lot of traveling. You can find her at Thank You for Saying No on Instagram. So it's at Thank You for Saying No. You can find her on LinkedIn. It's Kenya Rothstein, Rothstein, correct? All right, got it. So you can find her there. Find her on LinkedIn. Look for environmental attorneys in California if you have questions or a need. Check out her podcast. Of course, continue to watch mine. It's a great supplement where you can watch them both. And we do talk about a lot of the same things about stay out of law school and learn the stuff. So that's what we got here. Kenya, thank you for being on the show and not saying no. But thank you for all that you do. And just please share whatever information you want. So if the listeners want to find you other than on Instagram at Thank You for Saying No, is there a preferred method that you want them to find you?
Yeah, no, Instagram is good. If you want to submit a story, our link is it's in the Instagram bio. So you can submit a story, your own Thank You for Saying No submission. So the time you were told no, said no, or a situation didn't work out, but how you're thankful for that because of what it taught you or what it led you to. And I will say I am joking about not going to law school. Do it, but do it thoughtfully. And just, if things don't feel like they're working out, like trust that they actually are.
And just be ready, because you got two people here who's heard the word no a lot in their professional careers, and we're both doing our thing, and
Yep.
and we both have things that make us happy professionally,
Mhm.
and that's a fair way of saying it. So to all the listeners, thank you so much for listening to the streamingnetwork.com. Thank you very much. Going Bold, CC, Silverio, goingsolomedia.com, and everybody else. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful 2 weeks. I'll see you all in 2 weeks again. And Kenya, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.